Hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Happy Valentine's Day, you guys. Welcome to the Heidi St. John podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Today, I am really excited to have a couple in the studio with me that I have grown to love and admire over the years. Joe and Zan Tyler are here, and we're going to talk about marriage today. I think you guys are going to love it. Grab a cup of coffee and your spouse and stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I know you have lots of other things you could be doing, but I think you're going to be really glad that you tuned in today. You know that one of my passions is talking about marriage and family, and there's never been a better time to talk about it because marriage and family issues are always front and center for the cultural issues that we deal with as a nation and in our churches, and we've got to get this piece right. So we're going to talk a little bit about marriage today. Before we do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, to Not Consumed. Not Consumed is writing family Bible studies so that you guys don't have to be consumed by life. Check them out at notconsumed.com/Heidi, where you will find a free 5-day family Bible study download. Be sure to use the coupon code Heidi when you check out, and they will give you 15% off your entire purchase. Also coming up on February 22nd, I will be speaking right here at Firmly Planted Family for the Parenting with Purpose Through the Seasons of Life conference. We're going to be talking about parenting from little kids, so toddlers, all the way up through the teen years. You are going to love it, doing something we like to call diapers to diploma here at Firmly Planted Family. So come and check it out. I'm keynoting this, but my husband will be speaking, lots of other wonderful people talking on a variety of issues. And if you go to the show notes today, you can find out more, or you can just head on over to HeidiSt.John.com/events. You'll also see that coming up really soon, I will be in Rainier, Washington for their second annual homeschool conference. If you're anywhere in the Rainier, Washington area, come on, your homegirl Heidi, she's going to drive up for the day, spend a day with you. I hope you'll come for that. All right, without further ado, my goodness, Joe and Zan Tyler, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So this is a first for me, having you guys on here to talk about marriage. Have you been on the show before, Joe?
I think we did the after hours discussion a while back.
I think so, but it's been quite a long time.
Yeah.
You guys were at the old Homeschool Resource Center, and then you were here. But before we moved all the stuff in, I think it was just right after we got the building, right?
Yeah,
or something like that?
It was.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't open.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a kind of a shared and wonderful storied history with these guys, and I'm really thrilled that you're here so I can share how wonderful you are with my audience. I want to talk about marriage today, and really just hone in on what the Lord has done with you guys over the years, some of the things the Lord has taught you. But I want to go back to, because Zan kind of alluded to it. I did a podcast with her the other day, and we were talking about homeschooling, and she was basically talking about your first reaction to it, and that God had called her to something different than she thought, which He often does. But Joe, I'm going to start with you today. Tell us how you two met and how long you've been married.
Well, we both went to the same college, went to Furman University, and we were planning to work in Young Life together. Zan had been converted in high school, as was I, and Young Life and other prayer meetings were a really important part of both of our spiritual lives at that time. There was a huge revival going on, the Jesus movement in the post-Vietnam era. I think all youth were searching for something. And man, it was amazing. There were Bible studies going on in my town every morning, noon, and night, for weeks and weeks and weeks. So
it'd be neat if we had that again.
I really prayed that my kids could experience something like that, and I'm sure they have. It's probably just not the same format as ours was, but
The same scale.
Yeah, scale for sure. I mean, I remember even in there was an Episcopal church in town, and they had hundreds of kids every Friday morning at a prayer breakfast, and stuff like that's just pretty unheard of now. Although this next generation's out there, so we'll see. We'll see what's created in their wake as they carry on.
Yep.
But my Young Life, we were planning to work in Young Life. My Young Life leader gave me her name. her young life leader gave her my name.
Nice.
Yeah.
100 miles apart.
Yeah. So the cool thing, that first week or so, when you're taking all these advanced placement tests, I would go walking up to a group of girls and say, "Hey, do y'all know Zan Peters? We grew up in different towns." And I had no idea what she looked like. And so I spent days talking to all these kids looking for Zan. I finally found her, of course, on the library steps. Appropriate in many ways, because that's where she spent many an hour studying. And that's when I spent probably more hours taking naps. They had these awesome sofas right there. And in between my classes, I could go in there and take a nap, and Zan be over there studying. So it was awesome. So we were just best friends. I mean, we were absolute best friends at Furman. For the first several years we were there, and I think along about my junior year.
And, so let me just interrupt here. We got in the habit of, I would go to church with his family on Sunday and eat Sunday lunch with them, because I wasn't at home to do that. And so we,
But you weren't flirting with each other. There was just no.
Navigators. That wasn't spiritual.
This was just a platonic relationship.
It was.
My
Totally.
goodness. Okay.
Navigators, never daters is what.
Navigators, never daters.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff in groups. People in our Bible study did date now and then, but it wasn't frowned upon. We just, I was from the background where, as I grew to love Zan, I just knew I really loved her more than in a platonic way, and I just didn't know how to go from best friends to married. How do you do that? Do you try to hold her hand? I mean, that'd have been so weird,
Yeah.
And it would have, I don't know. I just
It would
decided
have
to skip that thing. Yeah, it would have backfired. It really would have. I felt like it would have. So it ended up that our Bible study was going to go up on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're going to spend some time up there and having a picnic lunch. And then I was going to take Zan to visit her sister, who was at a Christian camp, a Young Life camp up in the mountains nearby. And I figured, why not? So I proposed. Never held her hand.
Oh, no. Wait, stop. I'm just thinking, do not pass go, do not collect $200. You just bam, straight to the.
Yeah, I did. I just went all the way there. And and the funny thing about it, I remember beginning the conversation. She was sitting on the front seat. And
I wonder if my son Spencer's listening to this right now.
Yeah,
I mean, Spencer,
I'm giving Spencer love advice.
You're getting some really good advice right now, Spencer, from obviously the king of proposals.
Yes. Skip all the other stuff and just propose. Somebody sooner or later will say yes. I guarantee it. Sooner or later. So,
but it wasn't me.
So I told Zan that I just really believed that she was the one God had for me, and laid on as thick as I could, and I played the God card very strongly. And so the audience just wondered, well, how did Zan react? Just looking at me, if you're watching on YouTube, you see what a great-looking guy. Any woman would just say yes immediately, but not this woman. So Zan refused to speak to me. Slid over, hugging the door. I thought she was going to fall out.
Oh, no.
And really, she was able to, when we were around her sister Sybil for an hour or so later, Sybil, she was fine. Zan, totally normal. And then with anybody else, she was normal, but she refused to speak. So I would call her on the phone.
So this went on for 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that.
A couple of months. Because what I didn't know
was, you asked her to marry you. You passed all the markers.
So maybe that was delaying the time we should have spent me just trying to grab her hand. No, really,
no,
it took
that would
God.
Not have worked.
It took
I was
God to
not
fix
interested.
It. Took God to fix it. So what happened was I would call her up and she'd answer the phone, and when she found out it was me, she wouldn't talk, but she would listen. And I would reiterate. I thought, well, maybe she didn't hear me. So I'd reiterate, and I would add to it. Maybe I was getting a little better every time. Thinking, hey, if I do it, it was Groundhog Day. Maybe if I do it just right, But
This
still
is
not
amazing.
working.
This is
Still
amazing.
not working. So she still wasn't talking to me. I would still go meet her at her dorm, walk her to class, all that good stuff. Still wasn't talking to me. She was so mad. I could tell she was mad. She was really angry. Really mad at me because I didn't realize it, but I had ruined her life plan. She and her dad were really close, and they had talked about, her getting a law degree and opening up practice together. And I didn't realize it, but I had just messed up the entire life plan that she had.
So I mean, I can understand kind of where you're coming from. But if you're thinking, this guy has messed up my entire life plan, there's got to be some part of you that's like, I don't hate the idea.
Well, okay, I'll explain that. The other thing I kept saying was, not only did I think
You guys should write a book. It should be Laugh Your Way Through Life.
Yeah, may as
with
well.
Joe and Zan. You can laugh at us or you can laugh with us,
There
but
you
you'll
go.
be laughing.
There you go. So I used to tell her all the time, this added this to my talk. It wouldn't bother you so much if there wasn't something to it. That's what I used to tell her all the time.
See, that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, because otherwise she would have just blown me off, say, "Oh, Joe, you're."
Well, he was my best friend. That's what was bothering me. He was my best friend, but I did have this life plan, and I had no intention of
messing it up.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean,
But there was not another boy that you were interested in. Nobody else had caught your eye.
I never.
I kind of ran them off as we were going along.
He did. He did.
I would tell her it wasn't God's will for her to go out with that guy.
I would listen to him. I don't know. I mean, I recognize Joe is so bizarre as a spiritual authority in my life. I can't explain this. But it just was. But we were in a very strong, or I don't know how to say it, Bible study. We would get up and have prayer meetings at 5 o'clock in the morning. We were sharing our faith in season and out of season, sort of staying in trouble with the administration at our liberal school. And so it was, I mean, we were all in terms of the gospel. But I still had, I had never thought about what it meant to be a Christian woman. Did that mean anything different to me? I mean, I just never, it was like homeschooling. I just never thought about it.
Right, yeah.
And
never
so,
occurred to you.
No, yeah, it never even occurred to me that I never thought about getting married right after college. I just had things I wanted to do and things I wanted to accomplish. And so this really was.
And this is really at the height also
of the feminist movement. Oh, it was. This was 72.
So, and so of course the pressure is enormous to you don't need a man. Go get a career. Go do the thing. Yeah.
And I had professors. It was a small school.
Boy, I think when I
do not want to get married.
When I
after
think
college.
of the damage, truly, that the feminist movement has done to women, it's heartbreaking, and the opportunities that women have missed out on for love and for family because they were chasing after career. That almost happened to you, Zan.
It did.
I mean, Joe saved your life. That's what he told me.
I didn't think about it. I should have used that too. But I didn't need it, I guess. It worked anyway.
Well, so in the midst of all this, unrelated to Joe's proposal or anything else, somebody gave me a copy on campus of Elizabeth Elliot's book, Let Me Be a Woman.
Oh, it's over now.
And so I read the back of this book.
Such a great book.
And I thought, oh, I don't know that I want to read this book. This book, I just had this foreboding that it was going to change my life. But, I was serious about my faith, and I felt like the Lord wanted me to read this book. So a friend of mine on campus had a mountain house. We were in the foothills of the mountains. I asked her if I could borrow her house for the weekend.
I'm a fan of a mountain house.
And I said, I always say now that I went up there, took my book and my Bible, and fasted and prayed, mainly because I didn't know how to cook. And but I had this time with the Lord. And, this whole thing was just laying out. I just felt like the Lord was saying to me, I want you to focus right now on marriage and family. I want you to marry Joe. I want you to have children. And it just blew my mind. And I just wrestled with God over this because Joe is my best friend, but also, I knew I was going to disappoint people. And I wasn't, I never looked forward to that.
And was he still So I'm sorry, but I mean, I've heard the story before, but every time I hear it, I'm just like, I want to go back to the car for just a minute. So you're in the car with your best friend. And you're going to go see your sister. And I'm imagining that you were just like, yes, I'm going to spend the day with Joe. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to go see my sister.
Yes.
And he springs this proposal. Did it feel like it was out of left field to you?
I mean, the universe, maybe. It was out of, it never even entered my mind.
Oh, my goodness. And then also, I mean, and this is true. We've told our kids this over the years. Once that cat is out of the hat, I mean, once the genie's out of the bottle, you ain't putting it back.
No, because I kept saying to Joe, I just want to be friends.
Well, you can't now.
And no, that's what he said.
I mean, it's over
that's
now.
not an option. I thought, no, well, you're my best friend. You are my. So I was just. I mean,
she friend zoned you really hard.
But it was a true friendship. I mean, it was a deep friendship.
Yeah.
And that's what. I was so mad at him.
So you're sitting in the car, and it just shocks you to the point where you just you're so mad at him you can't speak, or you just don't know what to say.
No, it wasn't that I didn't know what to say. I was so mad at him. I just thought, I'm just not.
Well, it ruined our relationship.
Yeah,
it ruined the friendship.
Did. It did ruin the friendship.
It ended the friendship for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, because now it's not a friendship anymore. Now it's something different. So
Yeah.
you
And she has
basically, in
to
one fell
choose.
swoop, you redefine the terms.
Yes.
But in my own heart, I mean, I knew how much I loved Zan, and my love for her had grown. I mean, from the first time I met her, I was intensely interested in her. And the more time we spent together, the more I just loved her. And my love kept growing for her. And I had to know one way or another. So I was willing to sacrifice the friendship.
Like an explosion.
The altar of a decision. I had to have a decision.
Yeah.
Because it was torturing me to keep spending all this platonic-ish time with her, and to think that we would continue to go to school, graduate, and then just be good friends. I mean, I didn't want that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know one way or another, and I was willing. And I think that's what goes through a kid's mind, this barrier between boys and girls that's there, that God puts there.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot to destroy that in the last number of years in our culture.
Sure.
But
Okay, I something came to my mind as you were saying this, and I think it's so good because I talk to young people, all the time, because most of my kids are in their 20s and 30s now, and I hear from young women and young men how hard the dating scene is right now. Like a lot of these guys are turning to dating apps, and I'm not here to like knock a dating app. I have several friends now who are married and met on a dating app. But what do you say to a young man? And I know this is going to be all the moms are with the young adult boys are like going to lean in and take notes right now. So get it right, Joe. Don't mess it up. What do you say to the young men who are like, I give up, because the pressure's on the boy to ask the girl out. And I frankly think that that's right still. But the culture has turned the dating scene on its head, really, for young men. And I mean, my own son has said to me many times, dude, it's just too hard. Like you work up all the courage and you ask somebody out, and then they either reject you or whatever. And there are a lot of these young men, and I think the same is true for young women, who are just really discouraged right now, and are like, it's not happening for me, or it happened and I was rejected. That rejection's really painful.
Oh yeah.
What's your advice?
I think it's important for a guy to pursue. And the interesting thing,
well, you got that down.
the interesting thing to me about the equation, though, is most of the times the girls select. The guys pursue, but while the guy's pursuing, some girl's friend, so often it's the friend that's like, oh, and just kind of hangs around. And then when the other thing doesn't work out, they just kind of
coming in for the kill.
Yeah. And that's what guys don't understand, that just as they're pursuing and maybe feeling frustrated or whatever, there are girls there that are looking to select. And, too often guys in this culture where they can look online and everybody looks perfect because they've got all these filters.
Thank you, Instagram.
Yeah, they got all these filters, so they're used to seeing all these perfect people, and then they walk into a room and there might be 15 girls in there, and they exclude everybody but the top 3 because those are the 3 best looking girls, and they've given up on a life of happiness because they've let it be
focused on the exterior.
Yeah, just focus. And our culture they just really want you to focus on the exterior.
Boy, they do.
And
which
so
fades.
the thing to do
Yes,
is
it
just
does.
We're learning.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It fades.
Yeah, except with me. Man,
Except with
get
you.
to be better looking, you know. But yeah, guys, you don't give up. I mean, I've encouraged guys before not to pursue and not to worry about it and not to give up, and sooner or later there'll be that girl there. Now with Zan and I's case, and I think with a lot of cases out there, it's really important that your wife is your best friend, your absolute best friend.
Somebody gave us some advice that you run hard after Christ, and then you look over and see who you see running beside
with
you.
That's right.
Yeah,
Because it is the most important decision that any person will make.
Boy, that's true.
And when they decide to marry, they've got to be willing to keep that person as their best friend all their lives, and to continually work on and focus on loving that person above everybody else. And we're also selfish, and we've got this sin, total depravity problem that it's a challenge to do that, to decide to live selflessly. It's tough.
It really is. You and I were talking in the kitchen this morning, rummaging around for breakfast, which I apologize. I didn't really have any breakfast ready, but we figured it out, so it's fine. But you were saying that you had heard a quote that Tim Keller had said, probably on his podcast or something. But what was that?
He said, the ability to serve another person and put their needs above your own is not instinctive. It's something we have got to learn. And really, it's a gift that only the Holy Spirit can give. Because a person must be born again to receive that Spirit of God to empower them to want to serve. And what he said is, we're born selfish, and it precedes woundedness. So people that have been done wrong by the system, by their parents, and the way they were brought up, by other people, they've got a double problem because they got this original sin problem, and then on top of that, they've been wounded. And the only place that can break is at the foot of the cross. And you've got to treat, in a marriage relationship, you've got to treat your wife as more important than yourself. It's pretty clear. I mean, it's right there in Ephesians. Every time Jesus was asked who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, his answer was always the same. That person that serves other people, that puts other people's needs above their own. And that's not something that comes naturally at all.
But Joe, you've made it look natural, our whole marriage.
I don't know about that.
That's a pretty high compliment.
You have.
Yeah, I think that's a high compliment. Jay said a long time ago we were being interviewed. Every once in a while we do interviews for people, mostly talking about marriage and people just curious about how in the world he could stay married to me. I mean, really, that's where the question really is. And I remember Jay saying one time that he really saw his role laid out for him in Scripture when he read that he was supposed to love me like Christ loved the church. And he said, well, how did Christ love the church? Well, he died for her. He literally laid down his life. And in that regard, I think men have the higher calling, the greater calling in a lot of respects. And to find, I would love to hear what you guys think about this, because in all the years that Jay and I have been married, and the many, many years of marriage counseling and that kind of thing that we have done, I have yet to meet a woman, and Zan, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. I think that women are born responders. I think that God puts in a woman this desire to respond to the needs of other people, to respond to the needs of her husband. And in so doing, we become a reflection of his love, because we're going to respond to it.
Right.
Do you see, several years ago, someone said, you give a woman, a home or a house, and she's going to give you a home. You bring a woman ingredients, and she's going to make you a meal, right? You give a woman, right?
Give her a cell phone, she can order dinner.
Give her a cell phone, she can order dinner, right? But truly, women are multipliers, right? You give a woman a sperm, and she's gonna give you a baby, right? Women are born. I don't know a woman who doesn't long to submit to and respond to the loving leadership of her husband. And I'm wondering if you agree with that, if you go, nah, Heidi, I think you're off your rocker. What do you think about that?
It's funny. When I was at Furman, here's the other thing that was in play. I was an economics major, and all my classes my senior year were in the afternoon. So in the mornings, there was this place called the, what was Joe Carroll's place called? The Bible Institute of Greenville or something?
Yeah, something like that.
And he was just a retired missionary from Australia, came from a wealthy family, gave it all up. And I just loved to hear him speak. So I would just go to he would just let me come in when I could. And I remember him saying that one time, that women are born responders. And I tried to argue with him in my mind about that.
Would say that's wrong.
Yeah. But the more I thought about it, over the years, it's really true. But I think the key in what you said is a man who loves biblically.
Yes.
And selflessly, because I am not going to respond to somebody who's pushing me around.
Or you will respond, but not very well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so, but it's hard not to respond to love. It's hard not to respond to selfless love.
Yeah, in Keller's talks in his book about marriage, that's what he says. He said a woman's submission and love and respect for her husband ultimately boils down to how the husband has loved her. And so that's so an encouragement for men, that if you have struggles in your marriage, I really believe that God has made given you the responsibility to fix it. And in our culture so much, women are the caretakers of the quality of the marriage, and that's backwards. It's not biblical. And look at Adam and Eve in the garden. I mean, when she was interacting with the serpent and tempted and all that, where was Adam? He was standing right there letting it happen.
That's right. It's true.
Why wasn't he getting involved?
Yeah.
And I think a man's temptation is to give up his headship, give up his authority, give up his being involved and just letting his wife do it. And those marriages where I've seen that occur have struggles. But, I mean, there's always a fix for any marriage that's in trouble, and that is, really going to the foot of the cross, communicating with each other, walking with the Lord, and being willing to die to yourself for the sake of the other person.
Well, and that really is... That's the crux of it right there.
It is.
I know, marriages don't just fall apart. Somebody doesn't just have an affair. Marriage is like a garden, and the weeds will grow up if the marriage is intended to. But Jay had said something else. Jay came from a really healthy home, and I came from a really dysfunctional home. And so, and I have a very fiery personality. I'm a little bit like a fire-breathing dragon.
Really?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So when we got married, that poor boy had his work cut out for him, because I was used to living in an environment of stress and strife and anger and turmoil. And he came from this really peaceful environment. And I'll never forget, just as long as I live, one day, because we were struggling to just, I loved him. We were just best friends. I really did marry my best friend. That's what our wedding invitation said, that we had become best friends. And then we realized, that spark had really lit a flame, right? And this beautiful thing. But I remember Jay one day, we were sitting around the table with some of our friends, and, we're in our late 20s at this point. And he said, I realized that in my marriage, and he said, and this is true in your marriages too. If something's wrong inside your marriage, it's up to the man. It's up to the man to take the initiation to fix it. And I think you're right, Joe. You really touched on something that so often we don't like to talk about, because women don't like it, right? That because we want to feel empowered, we don't want to feel subjugated or whatever. But that's really not what it is. It's recognizing the God-given authority and the God-given structure that's given to us, that when we honor it, guess what? it works. And so I'm curious to know how you guys handle, understanding that biblical truth and realizing how much responsibility really is on the husband. I will tell it is so fascinating to me. And the longer I'm married, the more I see it. I am somehow, I am attached to however my husband is doing. If he is not doing okay, I am not doing okay. Right? If he's down in the dumps, if he's, whatever, if he's angry or he's frustrated or he feels, if he's upset about something at work, but particularly in home or in our marriage, I am not okay.
Right.
But conversely, if he is doing okay, then I'm, even though I might have struggles, I'm generally okay. I think we really are born responders. But I think the culture has said, we talk about egalitarianism inside of marriage, right? I'm more of a complementarian, but we talk a lot about egalitarian, right? Everything is equal, everything is even. How do you talk to young couples? Well, you don't even have to be young couples to be struggling with this, but the issue of, you talked about initiation, you talked about headship. I was writing down, kind of words that you were saying that I was like, well, that's you just triggered somebody. You said it's if you're going to assume, men are afraid to assume authority. You're married to a very strong woman. Zan's very capable. This woman has, argued before legislatures. She is a force to be reckoned with in and of herself. And yet she has submitted to that leadership in your home. And you talked about headship. Explain that a little bit to people who are listening, who are chafing at the idea of biblical headship inside the home.
Hey, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
So I think we lose so much as women when we don't. The submit word has just got, it's an S word. It's profanity,
for sure, 100%. Well, we've all seen it done badly.
That's
We've
right.
seen it abused, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah, that's exactly what the problem is. And just all the connotations of being a doormat.
Right.
And,
which was never the
That's
never
right.
the
And that
idea.
is certainly not my goal in life.
No, mine either.
And but it's interesting to me because Mr. Carroll, we were talking one day, and he said, the beauty of being a woman is you are mirroring the role of Christ in the Trinity. You're submitting Christ. Christ is God, and he submitted to the will of the Father. And he said, by virtue of that fact, when a wife is in that role, she identifies with Christ in a way that a man never can. And I just thought that was so powerful. Having said that, I would say, I don't know, I can't think of 3 times, but I'm sure there are 3 times in a big decision or an end result we disagreed on how something should be handled. Because we always, Joe is a great communicator, and he will not let me off the hook. He won't nothing's wrong with me, nothing,
right,
okay, well, clearly something is wrong. And so he will.
You lying.
Yeah, that's right. So he is so good about not letting
He's going to draw you out.
Yes, he is. And he's going to, one day I was so mad at him. And Lizzie, my daughter, was a teenager, and I was talking to her on the phone. I said, I'm so mad at your father. And she said, don't let him make you laugh, Mom. That's the kiss of death. The minute he makes you laugh. And she quoted this country song, don't make me laugh, don't make me smile. I want to stay mad a while.
It's true. It's so true.
But okay, so now I forgot where I was going with this whole thing. But it where was I going? Tell me. Finish my sentence for me.
You were about to say that.
I can't think of 3 times where I had to.
Where you disagree.
Submit.
So to speak.
Because we've talked about things to death. And so by the time we get to a final decision, we've talked about what are the good points, what are the bad points, what do you think, where do you disagree? And so, he's just never playing that trump card of, I've said this, I think honestly, this is how it's going to be.
But that is the godliness inside of your husband. My granddad said to Jay and I when we were first married, because I never saw submission handled right in my house. It was lorded over. It was a word that was yelled in my home growing up, which is so antithetical to what the Bible even talks about. But my granddad said, in a healthy marriage, the issue of submission will never come up.
Yeah, that's
It
really
just
true.
will never come up. And
that
I
is
can tell
so
you,
true.
in 35 years that Jay and I have been married, never once, I mean, unless he's kidding, has he ever said, submit, woman.
Yeah.
Like, he just would not do. First of all, I'd taken his life in his hands.
Yeah, he knew better than to say
Yeah,
that.
and second of all, I think my granddad was right. In a healthy marriage, the issue of submission is not going to come up because you each have the other person's best interest at heart. So Jay would never go out and make a giant purchase without talking to me about it. I would never make a big decision, and often I won't even make little decisions. You should have seen us, well, because we called you when we were trying to decide whether or not I was going to run for Congress. I would never make that decision without my husband's input, and he would never make a decision without mine. And it really had very little to do with who's the king of the castle.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
right. Yeah.
It's interesting. Family psychologists will tell you that when they work with couples and there's this extreme bitterness, and the husband really wants to try to restore the marriage, but he thinks he has blown it too bad. It's beyond repair. There's nothing he can do. They're always told a biblical mandate. No, you just love your wife to pieces. And the guy will come back and say, yeah, but it's not working. Well, you just hadn't done it long enough yet. You just got to keep doing that. And sooner or later, love will break down any walls of bitterness or regret or whatever. I know I'm never comfortable if I know something's on Zan's mind. And I'm always so happy to find out it has nothing to do with me. But sometimes it does. And sometimes I know it. Sometimes I've gone too far. I've said something that I knew hurt her feelings, or there was a backstory I wasn't aware of, and so I stepped on her feelings without realizing that's what I was doing.
And we have read that book, and we now know that I'm an HSP.
Yeah, there's this book out called Highly Sensitive Person, and there's a highly sensitive person test in there.
Oh, and you are a highly sensitive
And out
person.
of 20 questions, my HSP Geiger counter was a 2. Hers was like 18. So
It's true.
yeah, I always knew.
I do kind of wonder if that's a man versus woman thing. I would say I'm probably a highly sensitive person, and Jay, I'd be like, Jay, what are you thinking about? And nothing.
Nothing.
And when he says nothing,
He means nothing.
He means nothing. Yeah, like, I don't know how do you
think
I
about nothing?
I am never thinking about nothing. I assure you. Like if I tell you I'm thinking about nothing, I am mad at you.
Exactly.
What's on your mind? Nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's bothering you? Nothing.
Nothing.
Wouldn't you? I mean, it's funny. I had this realization one day that Joe wasn't, he wasn't stalling or anything when he said nothing. He said, I can think about nothing.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, what a gift.
So I
It
can
is
tell
a
you
gift.
many stories about when Zan was really mad. One of my favorites was we had some people coming over for dinner.
Good. Let's tell this
We
story.
had some people coming because the joke
good.
is on me.
Yeah.
So we had some people coming over for dinner, and I was in the kitchen. I don't know.
He had been traveling a lot, so I'm on my own.
There's that, I guess. And so I'm telling her what needs to be done.
Yeah, he's a project
see,
manager, and he's got a
She's
better
never
way.
cooked them. Yeah, I was trying to manage her project, which she did not appreciate. So finally, she just left the kitchen and went to the bedroom and shut the door. Probably slammed it, but I was going to give you that grace since we're on the air here. So she's in the bedroom. I'm like,
And you're not
man,
getting in there for
the
quite some
company
time.
is still coming, and I don't want to cook this meal. So
I just want to tell her how to do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I go back to the bedroom, and I tried the various emotions. It was like a cartoon. At first, I tried to be real nice and apologetic and talking to her through the door. And the door was locked. Door was locked. Not the bathroom door, but the main bedroom door was locked. And so I kept on and on. And then I said, well,
She's
gonna have
thinking
to
back
go
to
plan
Furman like,
B.
I should have been an attorney. What am I doing here?
I'm going to need to raise my voice. Even though I don't think that's the way to do it. Risk-reward calculation. I said, well, so anyway, I raised my voice, and beat on the door. Still nothing. So I went to the closet and got my screwdriver. I'm going to unlock this door. So I unlocked that door, and I went in there, and the window was open, and she was gone.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, did she run away? And I was like, no, she wouldn't run away because she likes the company that's coming. She wasn't.
She likes the
So I
company
went
that's
back in
coming.
the kitchen, and she was in the kitchen the whole time. She just got out the window, went around the house, came back in the front door, was in the kitchen. And I was back there yelling at the door, banging on the door. Anyway.
But I finished cooking without any further help.
I don't
Thank you
know
very
if there's
much.
any lesson in there at all, but
I don't know if there's
if
any.
there is, good. I don't know.
Well, I
Anyway.
think you guys are demonstrating something that I think is a secret to any really good marriage, and that is you got to be able to laugh. I mean, you have to be able to laugh. Life is hard. Marriage is hard. At some point, it has to be funny. At some point, it has to be
is
funny.
right.
And I know that Joe keeps you laughing. Because every time he's around me, I said to you, I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but the last time we were together, I don't know where we were. I don't know. We see each other at various places. We're like ships in the night. And then every once in a while, oh, look at us. We're in Denver. Like, that's kind of how it works. But I think I saw you one time, and you'd been up there talking about something, and Zan was in the back of the room, and you had her in stitches. And I had said to you, I'm like, dude, she still laughs at your jokes, like all these years later. And she still thinks you are the funniest thing on God's green earth. And she really does. And it's just so much fun to watch because that piece of it, the humor part of it, is really important because I know you guys really well. You've been through some deep water. Mm-hmm. You've been through some hard things. And I'm wondering, I don't know what comes to your mind, but because there are lots of things that come to my mind, just stories, Zan, that you've told me over the years. But when you think of some difficult things that you've come through, what comes to your mind?
I think there are probably 3 or 4 things. One is just our whole proposal story.
Yeah.
And not wanting to.
That was kind of a rough start there, Joe.
Well, the other thing
it wasn't
that
like off to
even
like
made
a-
it better.
You took a flying leap there.
Yeah, once she came back a changed woman, like, Moses down from the mountain. And
Oh, that's right, because you have this book. You've gone to
right.
the mountains. You're reading this. You're like, God, please don't make me marry Joe. Please, I'm asking you. Please, I'll do anything.
so she comes back, and she held my hand or something that let me know the answer was yes. I don't think she ever said physically yes to me until we got married. We just didn't talk about it,
we
But
Which is funny
anyway,
because you're such a good communicator.
the answer was obviously yes. And so then, okay, here was the next hurdle. That was hurdle number 1. I had no idea what hurdle number 2 would be like, and I was really stupid. So I decided
Okay, let's done.
to grow a beard and let my hair grow out, and wore these kind of hiking boots, and told her father I wanted to marry her daughter. And by the way, I was taking a break from college, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life.
And there's nothing that a father wants to hear more than that.
Yes, that's
Especially a type A, hard-charging, very successful
Smart.
father-in-law.
So that night, Dad told me, well, your mother and I have decided we're sending you to Europe to finish your college education.
Gonna get you away from that
Yes,
boy.
that's right. We don't ever
Translation.
want you to see Joe again. Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's a hurdle.
that was hard.
Yeah, that was a big hurdle. But I was just, the whole time I was like, well, if God worked this other thing out, even though I've messed this up pretty bad, I think if God's in this, it'll work out.
And he and my dad have been best friends.
Yeah.
And in Daddy's old age, Daddy kept saying, I don't know what I'd do without Joe. I don't know what I'd do without Joe. So
We were in town, and Zan's other sisters were not, so it put us in a position right there with him where,
and my sisters love my dad. That's not what he's saying. But
and he was a great granddad. Spent lots of times with our kids, and they got to know him well.
How long after your parents say you can't? Because obviously you did it anyway.
No, well, we didn't do it anyway.
So
It
what
was
happened?
it was a year till we got a yes, right?
Oh wow.
And so we would have to be real cagey about time we spent together. I would want to come over and see her and
Well, we
study
just-
together or
yeah,
something.
But we
and
didn't.
No, I would have to call, and you'd have to check to see if the coast was clear or not. And so, like, if your dad wasn't going to be there, I could come over and we'd hang out. And your mom, I think, really liked
Yeah,
me
that's
Did
from
you
the beginning.
go away to Europe for school?
No, I did not.
Wow.
So
I just told her it wasn't God's will. No,
Joe's laying it on thick. It's the God card.
That was really true.
It's the God
I'm actually
card.
still mad at you about that.
I know. She'd have had. So Furman had this
You guys are
winter
going to ruin
term.
your trip out to the Pacific Northwest. Remember, it was supposed to be romantic, Joe.
Oh, well.
You're going to ruin it.
Oh, well.
I was supposed to go when I was a junior at Furman. I was supposed to go to England for a little while and study at Cambridge or Oxford, and it was
English.
It was a Shakespeare course. And Joe, I didn't know Joe was interested in me at this point. And he said, you've got your Bible study here. You've got all your Christian fellowship. I just don't think it's God's will for you to go.
That worked before.
And I said, well, okay. And I didn't go. And that really was the semester where Joe told me he loved me. So,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So but I really did regret that for a long time. But not anymore. So
Not
that's
anymore.
good.
She forgave you. It took her 15 years, but it's all right. So you guys, you got married in what year was that?
77.
Got married
I
in
graduated
77.
from Furman, and he had another year left at USC. He had gone back to school.
All right.
I
So
know.
you got married, and then you decided, or you didn't decide to, but somewhere along the line you started having babies.
Yes, we did.
We waited 9 months after we got married till we had children.
That was the other part. I mean, we just felt like the Lord was calling us to have a family right away.
Yeah.
And
so you did.
So we did. And so on our third anniversary, I was 8 months pregnant with our second. So
Jay and I, we had Savannah, our first, like 1 week exactly before our second anniversary. So we've been married like a year and 3 months before we got pregnant. And it was one of the biggest fights that we ever got into because, we weren't planning. He was in school still, and I was working at the school because I got a great discount. If I worked at the school, I got a great discount on his tuition, trying to help him get through school. We find out that we're expecting a baby. And he says to me, and I was pretty far along because I just wasn't, it wasn't on my radar until I started just kind of feeling sick. And my whole world, my mom was like, "You're pregnant." I'm like, "No, we are not having a baby. We would not do that. It's not in the plan. You don't understand." And we find out we're pregnant. And so Jay's trying to talk to me about it. You cannot talk to a hormonal woman who's just found out that she's pregnant and does it, and but he's trying to like reason with me when I clearly could not be reasoned with. And he said, he's standing across like a quarter room from me, standing across the room from me, and he says, "Hey, Heidi, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna have the baby, and then you'll just put the baby in daycare, and then you'll just go back to school, and you'll just keep working, and you'll just keep putting me through school, and then we'll get the baby after school." And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." He goes, "Why wouldn't you do that?" To him, it was perfectly reasonable. I'm so mad at him at this point. I'm like, "You're not listening to me." I'm stamping my feet like a spoiled, petulant little brat. And I kick my heel up at him because I'm trying to make my point, and my shoe comes flying off. And I swear to goodness, you guys, I saw the shoe like in slow motion. And I was like, I was going to try to grab the shoe, but it was too late. I hit him right in the eye. I mean, I got him right in the eye, gave him a big old black eye, and he milked that thing for all it was worth.
He still does, I bet.
Yeah, every once in a while he'll go, "I see you can't be reasoned with." But you just, you realize at the time, like, okay, so one of these days this is going to be funny. At the time, it wasn't very funny because we were trying to figure out, this God shifting us. And I think a lot of times, when you walk into marriage, okay, I just said for better or for worse, but you're not really thinking of the for worse.
Well, you don't know you have no idea what the for worse is going to be in a marriage.
You got no frame of reference for it.
That's right.
But once you hit those deep water, that's when you find out what your marriage is made of.
I think probably one of the most difficult times for me was when I was, Ty and John were 7 and 5, and I was pregnant with a little girl. And then I just started not feeling good. This is before you had ultrasounds in every doctor's office, And so my doctor, who was a neighbor, Phil Levin, said, "Hey, I'm just going to send you to the high-risk specialist downtown at USC because he has an ultrasound." And he said, "You've got a heartbeat. You've had 2 good pregnancies. So I just think, take the boys. It'll be a field trip." He knew I homeschooled.
Right.
Well, Joe woke up this morning. He was supposed to go to Chicago. He said, "I'm going with you." I said, "That's dumb. Don't go with me." He said, "I'm going with you." And so we go to the doctor. She puts the ultrasound on my belly, and I scream from the pain. And she said, "Oh, that's not normal." Well, she starts crying and leaves the room. And Ty walked out with John, who was 5, and Ty, who's 7, comes up and he says, "Mom, I'm with you. And I just want to tell you, don't worry. You've got the 2 cutest kids in the world ever.
Aww.
We'll get through this." But, it was terrible. And I almost died during the labor and delivery a few weeks later.
And so what was the diagnosis?
She had 7 life incompatible anomalies. I mean, free floating heart and cardiac arrest, free floating intestines. It just was, everything was wrong and everything was bad. And so when I finally went into labor, I was real swollen, and I had even gotten bigger. And medicine wasn't then like it is now, and I was too far along for a C-section, and she was stuck. She had these cystic hygromas around her neck that were huge, and they couldn't burst. They just, there was no way to burst them. And so they thought I was in labor for 36 hours, and they thought I was just going to die right there. And so she, so finally they burst, and of course Joy was stillborn, and they put her on my chest, and Joe and I are both just sobbing. And there was this Asian female doctor there who was a NICU nurse. And she walked up to Joe and she said, "Don't cry, son. We thought you were going home alone." Yeah. And so while we were in the hospital, I got the call from the State Department of Education for our 60 or 90-day notice. It was probably 60-day notice of our first public hearing in South Carolina on homeschooling.
You're going through it.
So we are having to plan that public hearing in my hospital room after just losing our daughter. Years after that, I found a yellow legal pad that was just tear stained with all our notes about who we had to call and how we had. And I just wanted to go home and die, and not homeschool. I wish the boys for the first time were in school. And then we had this public hearing to plan. It was really, it was sort of an all hands on deck recovery.
Like God does so many times, when something is taken away, He gives something back. And in that situation, I was real despondent, because I thought, oh man, that's the little girl. We just lost our little girl.
And they didn't think we'd ever have more children. Yeah.
So the doctor set up this meeting with who was that guy? I can't remember what his title was, but he was some kind of high risk guy associated with the university.
He was
fetal medicine
geneticist. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he was basically telling us we shouldn't have any more kids. If we wanted another child, we should adopt. And I don't know, we just ignored him. And then Lizzie was born, I don't know,
about
a year or so later. And it was just such a miracle and such a blessing. I was so excited about that, because that was that was the little girl I thought we would never have. And she was always very special, as little girls always are.
They always say that, and I think this is true. Jay and I lost a baby to miscarriage, not nearly as traumatic as what you described. But I do think that when you go through that as a couple, you'll hear either it'll tear you apart or it'll
bring you together. That's right.
And I've heard you tell this story before, and I know that the Lord really used it to bring you together.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's an encouragement to people who are listening to say, hey, if you're going through something hard right now, you hang in there. Because you get past that, and now you guys have years, decades of shared experience, shared grief. Shared grief is still really precious inside of a marriage. If you don't let it destroy you. That's what the enemy would want, right?
That's
right.
And
I think the husband's temptation, as is always, is to just try to fix stuff and try to give his wife reasons why she shouldn't worry about it or shouldn't be so upset.
Yeah, don't be so sad.
Yeah, or platitudes or whatever, because he's not feeling to the same depth that she is. And that's your life, buddy. Your wife's going to feel things at a different depth than you do. That's what you signed up for, and that's the way God's planned it. Praise God. Women are not like men. I can't imagine being married to somebody just like me. That'd be no fun at all.
See, I've trained him well. I keep saying, if you hadn't married me, you would be so bored.
I said that to Jay all the time too. Aren't you so glad? Look how not boring your life is.
There you go.
So great. It's so great. I think in the about 4 minutes that we have, something left today, something I wanted to just touch on really briefly because it's important to me, because this is something Jay and I have really adopted, kind of an accident, I think, but recognize, wow, this is really what we want from our marriage, and that is this sense of shared mission, right? That I've always thought, God brings you together as a husband and wife. You're like the Wonder Twins, Wonder Twin powers, activate. We're on the 70s. Boom, He brought you together so that you could do something together that you could never do apart.
That's true.
And I heard a friend of mine say recently, actually, it must have been Dr. Tim Clinton. I was just on his show a couple of weeks ago. And he said, when you're wired together, you're fired together. Right. And I love this idea that because you guys are such a great example of this sense of shared mission, this bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And that was really God's design. Talk to us a little bit, talk to the couples that are listening to this. Or maybe there's a wife listening, Zan, who's really sad because she's like, well, good for you. But my husband doesn't make me laugh. And my husband, I feel far away from him. And she wants what you have, but she doesn't have it. How can you encourage the person that's looking for that sense of shared mission and that oneness, but they don't have it?
Boy, that's a really good, deep question.
It's too bad, too, because you got like 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to make it real quick. The one place where the Lord has always really met me is through prayer and fasting. And I would say if there's an issue in your marriage, you definitely need to discuss it. But sometimes if the other person isn't willing to discuss, you can't.
That's right.
But the ears of God are always open. And He promises to be the husband to the husbandless and the father to the fatherless. But
sometimes He means the absent husband.
Yeah.
The absent
yes,
father.
that's right.
So not that He's not physically there, He's just not emotionally there.
Yeah, that's right. And so I just think, we need to be on our knees. And I would say that beating somebody over the head with something is not the right way to approach it. But that is a deep sorrow. And I think they're only things that the Lord can fix for us and solve for us.
It's so true. Joe, we've really just got a couple of minutes, and I think I would like to end, I guess, talking to you a bit, because I think we have such a crisis in the culture right now of godly husbands. We've seen masculinity take a hit. We hear about toxic masculinity, and the feminist movement has run roughshod over men for generations, to the point where they don't even take the initiative to lead their own homes anymore. And yet you see men and women still longing for the thing that God created them to do inside of marriage together. What's your encouragement for the men, especially who are listening to this today? And they're women, mostly a lot of women, but I just think, what's your encouragement, for the couples who are like, I want that sense of shared mission. I just don't know how to get it.
Yeah, I think you just have to die to yourself. And
don't you have any easier way, Joe?
Yeah, take this pill. No, if you buy this new product, yeah, I wish there was something easy. But really, I think for a man, you've got to realize that your mandate is to make your wife happy and to love her as Christ loved the church. And I have no doubt there were times when there were other things that Jesus in his flesh would love to do other than the stuff he did. The difficult things, the hard things, the things that were by the sweat of his brow. And he said he was tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. And I think that because you've committed to this marriage, you just read your wedding vows. Look at what you've vowed to do. And emotion doesn't enter into that at all. It's all about you
choice.
Loving your wife and focusing on her happiness and living your life in such a way that she is happy and grows. So I think a husband just has to do that, is die to himself to see his wife have a great life.
I love that. Something that Jay said a long time ago. He said that he sees his job as the chief development officer for his wife and kids. Like, help me sort of just mine the gifts and abilities out of them. and he gets the joy in the process of walking alongside and being a part of something that God does inside of a family that really is eternal. Well, Zan and Joe Tyler, it's just been a delight to have you guys. Thank you for coming on the show. Zan, you've got a podcast. Where can people find you?
They can find me at zantyler.com, and the podcast is wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. It's just called the Zan Tyler Podcast.
Zan Tyler Podcast. Yes. You two are a national treasure. I wish you the very best. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Go do something romantic. Joe, don't screw it up.
Yeah. Hey, I already bought the present.
All right. Well, good. You're
ahead
of the game. I love it. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate
Heidi.
it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of the Heidi St. John podcast. We appreciate it if you'd share it and rate it. If you haven't done so already, send this podcast to somebody who needs to be encouraged in their marriage today. You guys love your people well. Love them well. And God's going to do amazing things. Marriage was God's good idea. And he would have you be healthy and happy inside of your marriage. Thank you to today's sponsor, to notconsumed.com. Check them out, notconsumed.com/Heidi. And you can follow me at faiththatspeaks.com. You can read through the Bible with me. My women's ministry is over there right now, reading through the Word of God. And you can sign up to do that with us as well. And we hope that you will. Have a great day, you guys. And have a great Valentine's Day. Go out to dinner. Do something fun. Spaghetti, that's good too. Chocolate always works. Think of something, guys. You can do it. All right. Have a great day, you guys. I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.